Oh, hi guys. So I was going to say something about the Mars bar. I think that Jeanette said something about a Mars bar. I remember, because I am that old, I remember when a Mars bar was 6 old pennies. And you think about it today, what does a Mars bar cost? Pound? 90p, something like that. So you can see that if you just left your money in the bank, it goes down and down and down and down in value. Called net present value, but it just goes down in value over time. So you certainly don't want to leave your money in the bank. Whereas if you were to buy property that's going up at 3% year on year on year, so after 10 years, it would be worth about £6,500, not 4.5, if it just stayed where it was. So, I mean, you've got a tremendous amount of investing thought going into this. So not only are you trying to make money from the rent, and that's cash flow, but you're also trying to get your properties to go up in value. I mean, when I was taught, they all said property values double every 10 years. Well, some of them did, some of them didn't. I just sold one of my properties in the last year that I bought for 140,000 and I just sold it for 460. So that just goes to show that that properties, you know, capital value is brilliant. And because of the age that I'm at now, I had to make a decision. Do I want to sell the property or do I want to just keep collecting the rent? And I thought, well, actually, I think I'll sell it and go on a few more cruises. So that's where we're going. What I'm going to do is, you know, a lot of people have been worried over COVID about HMOs, disparate people living in rooms in a property. Are they still a good investment? And the answer is, well, they are. I'm full. All of my HMOs are absolutely packed. They've all formed their little property bubbles. It's a very good way of investing. I thought I'd just introduce myself a little bit. So there's me in black and white, and my beautiful wife, all in color there. She actually became a mentor in property before I did, and I followed suit. But I became a trainer before she did. So. You know, and I've been investing and training now since 2003. So we are both property investors. I used to be an RAF pilot, and I had to leave the Royal Air Force because I had an eye issue, and that eye issue stopped me from flying. Otherwise, I wouldn't be a pilot now. I'm too old, but I do still fly, but only light aircraft. But the issue is that somebody else made a decision about my life. They said my eye had a detached retina. It's never had a detached retina. So some doctor made a mistake and ruined my life. But actually, my wife came along and she made my life. So that's excellent. So after leaving the RAF, I went to teach mathematics in a university. That's what my PhD is in. It has nothing to do with property whatsoever. I have to say, I remember Jeanette sitting in my classroom about 12 years ago because I taught her some of the stuff that she now deals with in property, and she's an excellent property investor herself. So that's absolutely brilliant. My wife's background is nursing. She became a mortgage broker because my daughters were very good at music. I was working all the hours that God made, working in the university. And working my way up that silly corporate ladder to being head of department. And Shirley went out and earned extra so that my daughters could have a fantastic musical education. My youngest daughter plays the harp. My oldest daughter, well, there's not an instrument she can't play, but she's a specialist in woodwind and piano. And by the way, if you go and buy a harp the size that my daughter did, you have to buy a new car to go with it. So you can see that it's quite an expensive hobby. And we didn't have the money. So Shirley went out, qualified as a mortgage broker, Claire, and became very successful at it. I guess people's skills are very important when you do that. But enough about us. Well, not quite. That was our first little HMO in Portsmouth. And 3 double beds, 2 reception, 1 part, that's when things started to look good. We discovered, I mean, it was before the Housing Act 2005. So this was just a house share, and the rules weren't the same then as they are now. but you can see our cash flow was £730 per calendar month, which is money that we just put straight into the girls' musical education. Superb little property. It's just a buy-to-let now. It didn't look so great as an HMO after a while, but it still earns quite a little bit of money for us. I could turn it back into an HMO. There's no real problem, except of course Portsmouth gone Article 4, which I'll talk about in a little while. So here's what our portfolio looks like now. It's pretty big. You can see some good sized houses there, some big HMOs, and some small HMOs. And that's just a sample of the property portfolio that we have. And it means that we get a really, really good income. That house there on the bottom with here has just been refurbed, and we bought that for 290. It's now worth 425. So and that's a really good 5-bed HMO. There's 5 beds even without thinking about it. I bought it in a bit of a dilapidated state. We put some money into it, and it's a lot better. I'm not that boat in the front is just an old picture. So a little bit about it. I would always say, why are you doing this? And therefore, what is it you want from this business? Do you want your goals? I always say it. People always tell me, yeah, we've got our goals. We've written them down. You must keep them updated, guys. What's your goal? Very, very important. Security is for you and your family, and or whoever you want it to go to. It's not a second income for us anymore. It's a first income for us, and that's the way it ought to be. And I'm happily retired from doing any sort of major work. I just love presenting to people. So so in retirement, I don't have to go out to work. I'll never have to go out to work again if I don't want to. That's not me. I do really enjoy doing some of this stuff. And where do you want to be in 5, 10, 15, 20 years time? You need to think about it, and you need to keep it updated. So what are we going to do today? We're going to look at some of the pros and cons of HMOs, the situation today. We're going to look at some due diligence, because that's key. You can't get away from the fact that there are legal aspects now to HMOs, and ladies and gentlemen, I have to tell you, they're only going to get tougher. One of my very good friends is one of the most senior environmental health officers in the country, and he tells me that at the moment the government are looking to make HMOs a darn sight tougher than they are now for the future. So we just need to keep abreast of it. I don't mind the rules because it keeps the average investor out of my market space. So you need to, but if you know the rules and you know how to avoid all the pitfalls, believe me, this can be a real earner. And we do social housing stuff with HMOs, and we let to charities. We do all that sort of stuff, and I don't even have to worry about them. I can forget about them in their entirety, because they are being looked after, managed, and they're licensed by somebody else. We're going to look at marketing. I'm not going to do the numbers in the way that Jeanette's done them, because I'm just going to show you a very quick set of numbers at the end. You don't have to do anything, and I guess this is being recorded, you can come back to it at any time. So what are the factors that affect HMOs then? So we need to think about tenants and demand. You do not buy property unless you can fill it. That's the key thing. Demand, demand, demand. Sometimes demand disappears, and you need to think about how you're going to exit from it being an HMO. Or you need to change the tenant type that you're putting into your HMOs. So tenants and demand, it's all about that. I always taught that you don't buy a property that you can't fill. And when you can't fill it, you need to think about, well, okay, what's my exit strategy? Article 4 in some areas is now causing a lot of people issues. That's a planning restriction on what you can use your property for. And you need planning permission now to run any HMO in some areas. The website for that local council tells you all about that. So therefore you can go and look it up before you go in. It doesn't mean you can't have an HMO in that area. I've just got another HMO in Portsmouth, which is Article 4, and the council are notoriously difficult to get planning permission passed, but they publish their rules on the planning website of how they make their decision. So when we go in, we're armed fully with the full amount of knowledge that we need in order to make sure that you can get the HMO, because their rules are there. And local councils just can't say no. They've got to follow rules and regulations of their own. I hear a lot about council tax and ensuite bathrooms. And if I get time, I'll talk to you a little bit about that. But, you know, so these days, a room with an ensuite can be charged its own individual council tax. But there are some tricks that you can play. There are some people that will say, look, I've got a 6-bed HMO and I'm going to put en-suites in every single bedroom. That's probably a mistake. What we do is you're materially changing a home, a potential home, into a house in multiple occupancy, and it's very difficult to change back to an ordinary home. And therefore, council tax can be charged if the rooms downstairs, for instance, what used to be the lounge and what used to be the dining room, if that's what you have, were en suite. So we only put them upstairs. And then downstairs, we find a place where we can have a shared bathroom. And very often, and you know, I've heard a lot of agents tell me, oh no, they've all got to be en suite, or else you'll never let them. That, ladies and gentlemen, is total and utter tosh. We've let ours like that. The other thing that I did was to put in my 8-bed HMO, 8 separate shower rooms with toilets. You have to go out into the corridor and go around into your dedicated bathroom, but effectively it's all shared. So it's got 8 bathrooms, each room has its own, but of course you don't say that to anybody. Because you have to go out into the common area and into your own bathroom, it's basically a shared bathroom. And that way that got over the rules completely in one simple go. There are people that will still say you need en suites in all the rooms. If your council suddenly decides to change its council tax rules because of the agency which deals with council tax, and that can be changed at the flick of some fingers. It's that easy for them to do. And at the moment, councils are a little bit short of the old readies. So a lot of them are still thinking about going to charge council tax on individual rooms, even if the kitchen is shared. They have the ability to do that. And the website on which all of those rules are sort of based, or guidance is based, is available to us all. One of the things that you need to think about in HMO terms is maintenance, because you've got 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, whatever size HMO you've got 10 people all living an individual existence, even if they are sort of a group together, you're going to find that your maintenance costs are much higher than in buy-to-let. So we will take a brief look at that as well. So what due diligence do you have to do? Well, again, I'm going to come back to tenants, because at the end of the day, you know, I advertise, I check with my letting agents all about the tenant demand in the area. And I'm going to find out by putting it on websites like Spare Room. I have an account on Spare Room, and spareroom.co.uk, or is it .com? I can never remember. But anyway, it would be, in a sense, something that I would always do. So tenants, just make sure that you're always going to be able to fill your HMO. The area is important as well, because, you know, now we have Article 4 in some areas. We need to understand what that means in terms of planning. We also have to look at areas in terms of what facilities do they supply. So is there big industry there? Is there a university? Is there a hospital there? Although I have a very special strategy for hospital areas, which is in the serviced accommodation sort of environment. because a lot of people now want to go and visit their loved ones. They can't get rooms in hospitals. Gosh, even visiting is difficult in some places. So area becomes very, very important. The council, you cannot avoid the council. Some people think, oh, I'm only doing a 3-bed HMO. I don't have to obey the rules because I'm not going to be inspected. You are wrong. The council is a very important element. Some of them have introduced specifically different types of licensing so that they can come and inspect your property. Even buy-to-let property is becoming licensable in some areas of the country. Newham was the very first. And there are other areas that are trying to find that extra cash to run their licensing schemes. It's often called additional or supplementary licensing. What are your exit strategies for your property? They're also key. I've had an HMO. Well, you saw my HMO in Portsmouth. It was a buy-to-let property. I very recently sold that because I wasn't going to get it. Wasn't going to be able to get it into an HMO because of Article 4. I've got HMOs in the other part of Portsmouth that are available, but that one wouldn't have been able to get planning permission, even though it had been an HMO before, since Article 4 came in. And that's one of the properties that we bought for, well, I think I made over £100,000 worth of profit on that in the 16 years that we owned it. You see, I don't keep properties that I don't need anymore. I buy and sell properties because that's part of property, the property game, and that's important. So, and there's also some financing opportunities. And one of the things that you can do is you can buy property with other people's money. We only buy property with other people's money. We don't buy it with our own at all anymore. I borrowed £147,000 to get started in this property business. I borrowed it from my mum-in-law because she wanted to move to Spain, and I thought it was a really great place to send her, and keeps her out of my hair, as it were. She really enjoyed it. We put all the money from one of our houses into her going to Spain before we knew about property, so that she could have a good life out there. Unfortunately, she's no longer with us, but her partner still is, and he lives in my property in Spain, and lives there very well too. So there are lots of ways, and I am a big advocate of borrowing money from other people, because I know that when they've got money stuffed in the bank, they don't want to get involved in property. They think it's too difficult, or they think it's crazy. They've been watching too much of that Problem Tenants and Nightmare Landlords program on TV. They lend me their money at well, many different rates. Some at 6%, some at 8%, some at 10%. And that's a negotiation tactic. We play that. I don't mind whining and dining my my investors, because they keep me in a very good life, I have to say. What are the legal aspects? This is the council bit, really, and the government, because they have tightened up since the Housing Act 2005 phenomenally. There's licensing on all 5-person houses. I shouldn't say 5-bed houses. It's people. It's all based upon the number of people in the property. So licensing is very important. You've also got standards. You have to meet certain standards. Now, the standards that the council operate are what they call minimum standards. So it's entirely up to you how that works, really. I like to make my standards a lot higher than the council expectation. In fact, they use some of my HMOs to go and show other landlords who aren't performing quite so well. They want to see good management practice. There's a legal management structure for which you can be fined at £5,000 per, up to £5,000 per infringement of the government's management regulations. But there's also the day-to-day management of your HMO. And it's important that your systems are in place, because ultimately, guys and girls, your name is on that license. You may have it managed by a managing agent. I don't know many management agents that actually take on the license, but management is very, very important. And I think you've got to play that down. I don't manage any of my HMOs, but I do manage my letting agents, because they are looking after my properties on a day-to-day basis. Yes, they liaise with the council. That's really important. But I liaise with them, and I also liaise with the council. I actually sit as, well, I used to sit as chairman of Newport Landlords Forum in Newport in South Wales. I thought it was really important to become part of the team that sort of looked after what was happening about HMOs in a town where I had a number of them. I also sat on the team at Swansea as well. I used to live in South Wales. I lived there for 24 years. And I know I don't have a Welsh accent yet. So layout and format. So we have a situation where I am not hugely in favour of big HMOs. I have a mentee who's been and bought a 29-bed HMO. I have to say it's only ever about 60% full. And the turnover is high. The management is difficult. Most of my HMOs are completely full and they don't change year on year. There might be the odd person going, but there's no big changeover. I'd probably say the minimum HMO size that I ever have dealt with is 4. You saw my very first one was 4. But I think sort of the 5 to 10 is where I like to be. Probably 8 is pretty much on the big side these days. I like 5s and 6s. I like to spread my risk by having more of them and less people to deal with per HMO. Large HMOs, I just don't deal with. It's entirely up to you. If I've got a 12-bed HMO, I'd like to split that into 2 6s. Different groups of people in each part of the HMO. That gives me less issue with people dynamics. So you need to think very much about that. People dynamics is actually more difficult to handle. If you've got somebody in a 12-bed HMO that's a rotten apple that's causing misery to the other 11, I'm telling you, experience says it's the other 11 that will go. When really you want the one rotten apple to go. These days, of course, as you know, notices to quit and subsequently eviction is quite a tricky business. Could be months and months and months before you get them out. We're buying an HMO at the moment and or looking to buy an HMO down in Torquay, sort of the area that I live in. And we've got one problem tenant and he's refusing to go. And the court case has been put off 6 times already. And I will not complete on that property until he's gone. So, you know, that's my problem and that's the way I want to handle it. Whoops. Okay. Management of HMOs, as you can see, you've got to be one step above the competition, whatever you do. So I'm not saying this isn't one of mine. I've nicked these pictures. So I hope the person who's done them doesn't mind. But you know, and they are mine. But you can see that you need to style out your HMOs. Actually, I style my kitchens very much in the same way this one's been styled. Nice neutral floor, wooden floor, maybe tiled. Grey cabinets, it's the in colour. I'm not so sure about the stripy retro style tiling, but there we go. That's you know, not to everybody's taste. Go see the competition. Go and evaluate the competition. If you're old enough to have teenage children, go look at it and say, "Oh, my child's coming to university, and I'd like to see what sort of properties they're going to live in." Because I would say there's still around about 70 or 80% of HMOs are dreadful. These days, of course, we teach how to style it out, or we get some styling gurus in to style it out. If you're good at internal decoration and that sort of stuff, and you can style it out, well, you know, that's brilliant. And then get it advertised. Also, scour. Easy Roommate and Spare Room, have a look at the pictures of what other people are doing, and you've got to beat them. So I'm a big fan of a Swedish company that does big pictures for walls, you know, big red and yellow sign outside of it. Or I will go to second-hand shops and I will find pictures from house clearances, because that can also be very good. So And if you're young enough, then go and look at it as if you are looking for a room, because you'll know what you like. But I like to see it light, white, and bright. And the other thing, of course, is you can always come to Claire and you can style out an HMO with leasing furniture, which is a revenue cost, by the way, and you also get some capital tax rebate as well from it, which is absolutely fantastic. So that's marketing. Here's a little tiny HMO. This one is a 4-bedder. This one's in Newport in South Wales, and I bought this one because it was going to be close to the university's town centre campus. Guess who was on the university's committee that was looking as to where the town centre campus was going to be? Well, I put my hand up. I was a senior member of staff and I was on it. I knew where they were going to put it, so I bought a couple of these little properties to go with it. Unfortunately, Newport as a university town almost virtually disappeared. Actually, they disappeared a year and a half after I left the university because they couldn't afford to keep me anymore. No wonder they went downhill. But this little property here is now a professional HMO. And in actual fact, it houses people that work at one of the local major hotels with 3 or 4 golf courses just a 1.5 miles down the road. And I turned it into one of those HMOs that some of the Eastern European staff actually live in it. This was a picture of the house when I bought it. It looks it's still pretty much as it is. It does back onto the railway line, which can be a bit noisy, but it is down the end of the garden, which is 35-40 feet away. Parking is limited in this particular street. This is obviously a crossing place. And, you know, but it's been a fantastic little property. Let's just take a look at some of the numbers. Okay, I bought this for 87,000. Mortgage was 65. By the way, the asking price was 95,000. So you can see I, back in the day when we bought it, the mortgage was 65. Now I've done the mortgage as if it's 6%. Actually, the mortgage on this property at the moment is 1.35%. So you can see my cash flow is much, much greater. But I've done this down below here. So rent, £400 per room. Management, MOE and bills, I've done 35%, not the 10 and 10 that Jeanette used, because we pay the bills. So we've got to account for that. And then, so the raw cash flow is 714,877. So as a buy-to-let, so we can see here the return on investment. You can see it's 877 times 12 times 100 divided by the total amount of money that's left in the property. You can see that that comes out at 23%. Okay. As a buy-to-let, the rental would only be 575, not 1,600. Management at 20%. Mortgage per month 326. I've kept it the same, although it's a lot less now. Raw cash flow. What do we get? We get a return on investment of just under 10%, assuming £15,000 worth of refurb costs. The refurb costs up here, 25,000 because it's an HMO. So we were going to leave more money in it. 23% is 4 years of rent to get your money back, or just over. That's 10 years of getting the rent back just to get your 9.8%. But of course, my cash flow is much, much greater now because, of course, this figure here of 326 is a lot less. So you can see that as the mortgage rate goes down, obviously my cash flow goes up. And at the moment, it's at 1.35%. So my cash flow is almost £1,000. So 1,000 times 12, you can see that figure is going to increase. So just a little thing there. This particular property is, you know, quite a good one. In fact, I did try to lease it to the hotel, They didn't want to do that, but they could have done, and they might as well have done, because they draw up in a bus every morning to pick up their staff to take to the hotel, and that's where they work. Even during lockdown, during the COVID, it was the issue wasn't around, because they kept their staff on a sort of a holding wage under the scheme that the government brought in for furloughing. So the staff are still there, and still works extremely well. Now, I know that was a whistle-stop tour, because you do it, but oh, don't worry about it, Jeanette. Because I think it was important that you got to see how the numbers were doing. We do operate our training courses as well. You can see that I work with both Barry and Jeanette. I'm business partner of theirs in terms of where we go, which is why we've chosen to have the same background up there. And if you want to know more about HMOs, well, there it is. And you can contact us through whatever way you need to do that. One of the things that I didn't mention was that I'm not a big fan of managing my own properties, but I know that there are some that still want to manage their own properties, and there are some that do. What I would recommend, though, is that you go and do some sort of training course in how to manage HMOs, or go and do the course with the National Landlords, Landlords and Residential Landlords Association, the NRLA, and get accredited. I find it so much easier to get tenants when you can show an accreditation certificate on your advertising, because there's a higher level of trust in doing that. And so for those of you that are doing buy-to-lets and are wanting to move into HMOs, and I think Gillian, you just bought your HMO, I wish you all the success in doing that, as I wish all of you success in your property journey. And it is an exciting journey, and one that you should embrace and just get out there and get on with it. Thanks, Claire.